Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks provides unique mentoring opportunities to enhance your modeling skills by connecting with talented modelers and manufacturers from around the globe who generously share their knowledge and artistic expertise. Build your confidence, refine modeling techniques, and share your projects with a supportive community of fellow modelers, all while enjoying the world's most rewarding hobby. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom and YouTube for our free live program. Missed a program? No problem. Individual show segments are uploaded to YouTube for convenient on-demand viewing. Be sure to connect with the New Tracks community by joining the New Tracks Facebook page, where you can interact with other modelers and see what they are modeling. Visit our website at www.newtracksmodeling.com, where you'll find information about upcoming events and the latest issue of our monthly newsletter, Observations. And
good evening, I'm Tom Farrell. I'm your host of New Tracks Modeling, where modelers help modelers build. This evening we have a very interesting program for you. And last week we had some of the highest first-time views that we've ever had, so we're going in the right direction. And Phil, if you don't mind, if you could put up our program. Well, there we go. No.
YouTube is showing something different.
Okay. Well, are we seeing that? We should start. There we go. Sorry. Okay. So this evening, we're going to have a Charles, the Director of Sales and Marketing from Cato. We've longed to want, I don't know what we're doing here. Maybe we should start this whole thing over. All right.
Go ahead. I was trying to recover from what happened there. Zoom decided to play a loop back. Just continue.
All right, we'll edit this out of the post show. Hi, I'm Tom Farrell. I'm your host of New Tracks Modeling, where mentors help modelers build. This is our program for this evening, and I'm excited to tell you that we have a nice representative from Cato this evening, the Director of Sales and Marketing. You're killing me here, Phil. Yeah. I'm going to do it one more time. The video. Good evening, I'm Tom Farrell. I'm your host of New Tracks Modeling, where mentors help modelers build. We've got a great program lined up this evening, and we have for the first time, the Director of Sales and Marketing from Cato. Cato is one of the major manufacturers of N-scale equipment in the world. And we're fortunate to have Charles Biko, I can't say his name, Biko-Wilski, sorry, Charles. And after the N-scale programs, we have Steve Bittinger for news and views on G-scale. We're also going to feature O-scale, HO scale modeling this evening, building an HO layout, part 2 from Ed O'Rourke, MMR. And we also have Phil Edholm, who's going to do part 2 of his 3D printing and acrylic modeling of his NMRA contest winner, first prize in the national contest. And then we have Mr. Martin Breckbiel. He's going to do part 2 of an old-time Exacta passenger car. This is a very fascinating build, and it's basically like building an antique. And we're going to have part 2 of Carroll Creek Designs, Steve Sherrill's segment on narrow-minded with a focus on narrow gauge. And then if there's time, I'll feature a scratch build of the Turtle Creek Depot. And then we'll finish up with another layout tour from the Pittsburgh Narrow Gauge National Convention. So it's a tight program. I urge all the hosts to keep, or all the segment people to keep their presentations to 15 minutes. And I'd like to begin with the sponsor of our show, Brennan Model Railroading.
Tonight's New Tracks Modeling Meetup is sponsored by Brennan's Model Railroading. For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products focused on the O-scale market. Their flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. The prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, Brennan's has developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Brennan's also has craftsman kits that anyone can build. The complete photographically illustrated instructions assume you've never done this before, and explain in step-by-step detail how to create an outstanding model. The Frank Ellison Tribute series of kits are amazing additions to any layout. These kits take Frank Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level using modern methods and materials with Dennis Brennan's additional details and amazing instructions. See the complete line of products on the Brennan's Model Railroading website. Use the QR code to visit.
Before we run the sponsor for the two N-scale programs this evening, I thought I might just share with our viewership that I personally was in N-scale in its very beginning in the United States, way back in 1967. It was brought over here in 1965. And about half of the locomotives I have are Cato. I have about 90 of them. And I just want to say what a thrill it is for me to actually meet somebody Cato, because they were a real game changer in the quality of the locomotives. For years, I guess they made locomotives for Atlas and a couple others in the N-scale world, but when they came out with their own brand and introduced it in the United States, it was a real game changer. So before we begin with Bill Stimpson, his segment, let's run National Capital Trains. They're the sponsor for these two segments this evening.
National Capital Trains is the largest supplier of N-scale modeling products in the state of Virginia. We have been in business since 1989. We carry a full line of modeling products, specializing in N and HO-N3 scales. We carry a large selection of competitively priced high-quality N-scale products from Atlas, Bachmann, Digitrax, Intermountain, Kato, Microtrains, NCE, Pico, Rapido, Soundtrax, as well as Brass. For foreign railroad train aficionados, we offer a wide selection of Japanese and European prototype trains. We are located 20 miles from Washington, D.C. in Springfield, Virginia. We are a short 7-minute drive off Interstate 95. Stop in and see us for the best in N-scale. We also have online ordering on our website, including great prices and expert advice. Call us for your N-scale modeling needs and advice. Use the QR code to visit our website. We look forward to serving you.
All right, I'd like to begin tonight's program with Bill Stimpson. He's going to do a segment, News and Views on N-scale, Making N-scale Trees and Signs. And Bill, thank you for your participation this evening. And immediately following Bill will be Charles from Cato. Thank you.
Hi, guys. What did we do? I hit the share button. Oh, why is it not? Here we go. Oh, no. Oh, shit, wrong button. There we go. Here we go. Picked the wrong button. Sorry. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about signs and trees in N-scale. Last week we talked about how I made signs on Scotch Magic tape, and there were several questions, so I thought I'd quickly run through how I do it.
Bill, you're still not
You're not
sharing.
sharing. Click the share button again.
All right.
Go through it again.
there we go.
There you go.
Now it's showing.
Yep.
All right, now I got to go back to the beginning, right? Oop, wrong way. Okay, how do I get this thing back to the beginning?
There should be arrows at either end.
There we go. Sorry. Okay, so I would decide to go through how I made those signs for you in case you wanted to know. I make my signs in Google Sheets, which is essentially Microsoft Excel. And then when you do that, you print them on a piece of inkjet paper. That's the important step, because then you can tape the acetate over the area that you want to print. You need acetate there or you're never getting the tape off. So then you place the Scotch tape on the, I don't know if you can really tell. These pictures are kind of funky. I didn't notice whether I could really see the Scotch tape on the pictures. But anyway, you place your Scotch tape over the spot you want to print on the tape, on that acetate, and then you put the printer paper back in the printer, print again. Don't forget to check the orientation of the paper, because you'll find if you don't check it, you'll print on the other side of the paper or not where you really wanted it. I've done that more than once, unfortunately. Oops, I went too far again. So that's how I print them on the Scotch tape. Then you just peel the Scotch tape off the acetate and there's your sign. So hopefully that answers the questions people had last week about printing on Scotch tape.
Bill, do you reset your printer to a photo print or photo paper to make that print on the Scotch tape?
No, I just use the regular setting. I guess you could. I don't bother resetting mine.
No, I found that's necessary with decal paper.
Yeah, probably is.
Okay, thank you.
So this week I decided to make some trees in N scale, and can be interesting in this with the size. I mean, think about it. A 40-foot tree is 3 inches tall in N scale. A 10-foot tree is less than an inch. So to make these trees, I used some Woodland Scenics tree armatures, which are plastic, and you twist them to make the tree a little more realistic. I used Woodland Scenic clump foliage in dark green and medium green. I had some white metal castings of trees and stumps that I found at a swap meet several years ago. And then I twisted some trees out of copper wire that I salvaged out of an old lamp cord. And to hold things together, I used Liquitex matte medium. So to make a tree from copper wire, you cut the appropriate length of wire and strip off the insulation. Twist a third to half of the wire to form a trunk of a tree, as you can see in the middle of the picture. Separate the rest of the strands into groups and twist together to form branches, gradually making smaller and smaller groups. And then that dime will show you how big this particular tree is. And then put matte medium on the branches and rip the clump foliage into smaller clumps and attach it to the matte medium, to the trees via matte medium. Let dry and then repeat again and again and again until you've built the tree you want. And here you can see some trees in the process of finishing up. And some more trees, also in various stages. The brown that you see in those bases is the brown that the Woodland Scenics molds these plastic sprues in. I chose to paint some of them a grayish color, hoping it looks a little more realistic. And then I installed these on a section of my layout. And what I do is I drill a hole where I want the tree, and drop a drop of Elmer's glue there, and then place the tree in the hole. And here's that area with trees that I made in about a week. And even closer focus, you can, also use some clump foliage from various manufacturers. So that's all I have this week, Tom. Any questions?
No, that's pretty interesting, Bill, and I think we ought to do a follow-up on the printing. I think there's more that could be learned there on printing in general, like you're discussing. You know, that's a fascinating process. Okay, well, I'd like to jump right in with Charles. And Charles, it's great to have you on this evening's program. And
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm Charles from Cato, USA.
And Phil, if you could pop up Charles's first slide. And it's all on you, Charles. There we go.
So I'm Charles from Cato, USA, and we've trying to expand our mini diorama circus, and this is intended to get new hobbyists into the hobby. And this is our way of getting people into the hobby and interested into the hobby. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So what is the mini diorama? Well, the mini diorama is, in essence, just a small little kit similar to modules, T-track modules, N-rail modules. Same concept, but very small, about 6 inches across. I have a finished one here. That's actually the same one here. So the idea is to connect these modules together, and they're very small, low risk, inexpensive, and it allows people to create these little dioramas that don't take a lot of effort, and it gives people just kind of dips their toes in the water so people can kind of understand what the modeling industry is like, and how to model and see if they enjoy it or not. The next slide, please. So this is how they connect together. They just snap together. You connect 4 or 8 curves and you make a circle. You have straights and curves. The idea is it's as simple as possible, and you can put whatever. Nothing needs to be in scale. So while these look great here, we have some that are just kind of very small pieces off Amazon, cheapest things, but the kids really enjoy it, and that's what we're targeting, is the younger audience for this. The next slide, please. So how can the mini diorama grow the hobby? Well, it brings people to the hobby who would otherwise never take notice due to its inexpensive nature and its connection with schools. We've developed a STEAM program, so that's going to be science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. So we've been targeting schools, clubs, 4-H, scouts, and museums in an attempt to get them to expand the hobby towards people who wouldn't normally do something, because let's be honest, building a layout is very formidable task. So this is the first step in multiple steps into possibly building a layout. So that's what we're doing to get to grow the hobby. Next slide, please. So, and to make it more beneficial for everyone involved, we are developing a fundraiser opportunity for clubs, schools, and museums by sponsoring a make and take here. So what this entails is we sell the mini diorama base kit, which was going to be that first image, which was just a piece of wood and the track. And by selling it to $4, you can sell it at $8. And this allows clubs to make a profit off this sponsor and also expand their hobby. Excuse me. And we tested this at Train Fest in Milwaukee of this year, and we had well over about 400 people join us for the mini diorama circus. And they were able to make plenty of different creations. And some people right off the bat were super skilled. Some took a while to get there, but it was something very interesting seeing everyone, and people who typically don't do this were interested in this. And so after that, they were able to take their mini dioramas home. Excuse me. And possibly start a new hobby. So that's kind of the idea behind this, is getting people into the hobby and also being beneficial for clubs. So if you have a club at home or a museum that might be interested, feel free to contact us. We have our contact information all on the website. So feel free to contact us with any information or any questions, and we will be more than happy to talk to you about possibly helping sponsor a fundraiser opportunity. Next slide, please. And that's really all I have. I just wanted to introduce you guys to the mini diorama and how we are doing, what are we doing to expand our hobby?
Charles, let's talk this a minute. You may not be aware, but New Tracks Modeling has a scholarship program. And last year we gave away 3 $2,000 scholarships for STEM programs. And the fellow that created New Tracks Modeling, a fellow named Jim Kello, had this vision to bring youth into model railroading because youth are, of course, the future of the hobby. So I think, you know, I know Kato goes to a lot of shows, but we do a lot of local shows ourselves, our members and whatnot. I see the potential for us to promote your program at our tables, and of course, at no cost to you, and some sort of partnership where we're constantly, you know, I must talk to Jim Kello, the founder of this, every day. And we're always talking about the youth and model railroading. If we don't promote the youth, we have no hobby in 30 years. Just be us old guys. Well, you're a young guy. But
yes, well, I'm living proof of that. But yeah, that's kind of what Kato, we can go to the big shows, but we can't make it to every single small show. And that's why we need your help to expand this program and bring it to these local shows. Because maybe there's somebody who can't make it to these large shows, but they're able to make it to a small local show. And that can really change their perception on the hobby. And we want to make sure that everyone has the ability to get into the hobby at an affordable price too.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that we see is of great interest with Kato is this the ON18. You know, there's little subsections of model railroading that little growth spurts, and there's a lot of interest in ON18. You'll see a little later in the show, if you stick around, there's a lot of what we call cottage industries that do 3D printing. And for example, they'll make shelves that go on your drives. And there might be some room for some partnership down the road with some of these folks as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think it's exciting that we got a guy like you on the program. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the pushing, presenting the youth and model railroading. It's because it's one of our drives at New Tracks Modeling, particularly the New Tracks Modeling scholarship. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing is anything that's learned in this can also be used to make a mini diorama. So like the N scale trees, that was a brilliant idea, and using those, and you can throw those on a mini diorama. So the possibilities are endless. We've seen a lot of people use other products like Legos is kind of their basis. So when we're doing this, we want to make sure people are open to anything goes. It doesn't matter what's on as long as the customer is having fun.
That's right.
Charles, I have a question. This is Greg.
Sure.
Our Model Railroad Club is going to be working with 10 families that have young children in March, and we're going to be using the Kato mini dioramas. Each kid will get a couple of those to build. I'm wondering, does Kato have any plans to maybe make 2 of them you can put together to get a little bit of elevation or anything so that it's not completely flat? Any thoughts about that?
We don't, but if you just use a regular piece of Unitrack to bridge the gap, they're flexible enough where they can take a bit of a grade. So that's what we've noticed, because some people had been using different just 1-inch foam board to make these dioramas. We don't recommend that because it kind of limits you a little bit. But sometimes you'll get the different elevations. So just a piece of Unitrack, regular piece of Unitrack will adjust that elevation, no problem.
Okay, we'll play with that some. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I saw in the chat that somebody had a question on where to order these. You can order these on our online store, but if you are doing it for a club, a museum or whatnot, there's also an email there. So send us an email so we can get you that discounted pricing for sure.
Well, thank you, Charles. It's really exciting to have you on the show, and hopefully this won't be the last. I think there's some things we can do down the road together.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for having me.
yeah, thank you. Okay, well, next up is our News and Views G scale. And It's Steve Bittinger. We don't have a sponsor currently for G scale. So any scale people out there, there's an opportunity here. New tracks modeling, we probably, after a couple days and we break out the segments, we probably get well over 1,000 views or more after a week's showing. That's looking at the entire show and adding up all the segments and those views. Many people don't realize our New Tracks Observations newsletter actually has a circulation of 8,000. Not a lot of people know that. And so if you advertise on the show, we do put your logo on the newsletter, but you have an opportunity to advertise in the newsletter as well. Anyway, so I'd like to introduce Steve Bittinger, News and Views G-Scale. Hopefully. Steve, you there? Yep.
Well, I'm here. Are you there?
There you go. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a while. Probably forgot who I was, but I think it was last year. We were last year quite a while back. So I got 3 parts to tonight's program, and the very first part is going back to the idea we had to take a train car or rail car G-scale one and leave it outside for nature to weather it. So it has been out there since mid-October of this year, and it's going through all sorts of weathering conditions. We actually enhanced it a little bit by putting some scrap metal pieces up on the roof of the car. So later this afternoon, I went out and it has snowed here in West Virginia and the rail car was buried, but I'm going to open up the box, which is containing a rail car. And that's pretty much how it came out of the ground or out of the snow 2 hours ago. So thus far, I don't know how well you see what's happened, but the top of it is starting to weather up pretty good with our scrap metal effects. I know on the sides through here, we're starting to see staining all the way around, pretty typical. And that's probably the way the progress is going to be on our project. So we're anticipating snow Saturday and Sunday of this week. So it's going to go back out and suffer through its 3rd snowstorm. And we're going to keep it out there until springtime. And then we'll see what our car looks like. Natural weathering versus man-made weathering. So there you go. Update on that. Let me set this thing out of the way. Another catch-up project was we had started building a raised platform outdoor railroad at the bequest of some folks down in Kentucky. And we had a couple of stages to that. And I'm going to just do a refresher. Not everybody saw the earlier programs necessarily. Might be their first opportunity. So this was our initial design for a raised bed. It's about 30 inches tall. The perimeter made from from railroad ties used as landscape timbers. And they're laid up to the height of 32 inches. We backfilled a little bit to keep everything in place. And as of the last program, I was to the point where we then, hopefully everybody can see this, had our retaining walls laid up all the way around. I told people the simplest way to handle drainage is to go out and start gathering up rocks and bricks and anything else you could find. So here we have done that. Put them in the bottom. We hope to have anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of this material on the bottom. That's what's going to be your drainage for the whole project. I went ahead and closed it in. There's 2 choices on this. A, do what I did, close it in the whole way around. B, leave a little corner low. If you're going to wheelbarrow future materials and so forth into there, that's a much easier way to do it if you don't have mechanized equipment. So at this point, it's all been laid up. We had a little scrap left over, made some steps. for convenience up here on the side. And then the next step was taking black plastic trash bags as our liner. I've cut down to the miniature size right here. Those have been put against the interior, on top, draped down to the sides, stapled in place, all the way around on this perimeter. This is our moisture barrier. This is a 6 mil plastic. You're either gonna buy a roll of plastic or you're gonna get a box of contractor's trash bags, which I had recommended you do. That way you can use as many of the bags as you need in here, and the rest of the bags you can use around your home. Actually, as part of putting in your stone materials, you're going to need to provide some type of drain tile. This is probably the most common one. This is a 4-inch perforated drain tile. These come in perforated or solids. You can get connecting devices to make 90s and so forth, or you can just take the stuff, put some slits in here, additional slits, and you can bend it as you need. And that material is going to go up against the exterior perimeter. And we've allowed an opening in our railroad ties. We've allowed an opening of 8 inches tall by having a gap about this big, about an 8 by 8 opening. That is where this pipe is going to exit. So any water that collects inside that does not percolate down through the soils, say like now when we have frozen ground, will come out through this drain tile, exit away from your railroad. Next thing we're going to do is we have to fill this up to the top or slightly higher with topsoil, clay, whatever you can get. I have recommended you contact swimming pool companies when they're digging for pools. They're glad to get rid of a lot of their material. So now we have to do a little bit of math. The area, I did the calculations for you, inside of here is 636 square feet. But we need to know cubic feet. That's how much material we need to fill this thing up. Pretty simple calculations on that. Since we're about 2 feet deep, it'll be double our square foot area, and that's going to be 1,276 cubic feet of material, at least that much, especially if we want to profile it, not just have this be a flat tabletop when we're done, but have some rise and some rolling material we want to work with. So the question is, how do I know how many truckloads of fill I need to ask for? The typical tandem axle truck can hold about 400 cubic feet of material. Depends on how heavy it is and the type of truck. So you're going to probably be looking at about 3 truckloads to work with. When we got a truckload arriving, Mr. Sherrill was driving tonight. And he's got a tandem axle, a typical tandem axle dump truck you see pulling up here to our site. What you want the driver to do is you don't want the driver, beep, 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 hold it, beep, thank you. You don't want him putting it down inside of here. You want him to raise it up. See if our driver can dump us some material here. We want most of that material on the outside, right here. And that is going to be an equipment ramp so that the first machine, a bobcat, tractor with a bucket or whatever, he's going to come up over top of this material, push it inside, and that's going to be his ramp. And that's going to be how he brings future materials. Once that's made, second truck comes along. Oh, my driver quit on me already. Second truck comes along, beep, 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 beep. He uses the very same ramp. He dumps the second load inside. There you go. And our machine operator, he's going to come in and start spreading this back. When we get all done, we're going to have a small pile on the outside. No big deal. He's going to take his bucket. He's going to pick that up, advance it in, or he can run around to the sides and add it wherever he like. So we're looking at typical, this model truck that we have here, typical tandem truck, 400 cubic yards, 3 truckloads, and you're going to be in pretty good shape for that material. What's going to happen next is, I don't care how good of a machine you have and he runs over top of that, this is going to settle. This is going to settle down. So when you get done, you sort of want it to look like a loaf of bread on top. You want this thing to be humped up 2 directions here, a high center in both directions. You can always get in there and touch it up with the rakes and shovels, as you need after that, because at some point, we're gonna have a pretty solid surface to start laying our track at. This will come up later in our program as to how we go about that. Some material that you can get a hold of, if you live in an area that's sandy type loam soils, this is going to compact much better than here where we live. We have mostly clays for our soils. So topsoil will compact the least. Clays will be best. A mixture with sand will be the best you can get for a base. So depending on the region of the country you live in, after all, I wouldn't turn down any fill if it's free. Take it, put it in there. You can dress off the top of this for your vegetation, your planting area. You really only need about 4 or 5 inches of really good soil on that top to put your plants in. Next time we do a program on this, we are going to come back and we're going to start shaping this up, and we're going to have to start thinking about a track plan that we're going to put in here. It can be any design that anybody comes up with. You got a whole month probably till I get back here to think up something that we can have in the way of a track plan. Third part of tonight's show. I want to thank Mr. Sherrill for his excellent driving. I'm the world's best expert on soda straws. I've spent way too much time searching out soda straws. Everybody asks me, why do I search out soda straws? And the answer is they're one of the very best modeling items you can get, and they're all free, absolutely free. So where do you go to get soda straws and the sizes available? I have here on my tray all the type of soda straws that I have managed to go out and collect around here. From very tiny ones, this little black one down here at this side, courtesy of Panera Bread or Starbucks. That's from their coffees. This type here and here, these are kids' party straws. You've probably all seen these. This is the one you flex. You can stretch it, flex it some more. These are going to be great for making bins. Have a couple projects we can do with these. And guess what? This is the big one. And here's a little guy right here. So you have choices in that type of product. If you go to McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, guess what? Every one of them has a different diameter straw. You would think they'd all be the same. No, they're different sizes. This red one I have stuck down in here. This is Wendy's straw, right? Here's a straw from another fast food outfit. Look at that. Perfect for making fittings and going inside. So you just hang on to all the straws you come by at various locations. This is the biggest one I have found to date, right here. This is a nice big guy, right? We have in our region, and maybe in yours, Sheetz convenience stores. They offer milkshakes. This is their milkshake straw at Sheetz, not their regular coffee or soda straw. These are hanging around in there. Usually you can have 1 or 2 and nobody's going to say anything to you if you liberate a few of these straws. But this one has very stiff sidewalls. It's really strong, and it's great for a lot of projects. This one here, smaller diameter, small straw, right? This is a very rigid one also. This one I have found at independent, I'm going to say local stores that are not chains. They must get these from some supplier who's making these. Who knows? It could be all made in China for all I know. But anyway, start going out and looking for soda straws. Next item. This. Coat hangers. Here's one size. Here's a baby size coat hanger, literally. Go to the Dollar Tree, the dollar store in your area. You can get a whole pack of these, about 10 for $1.25. Same with these guys. Why do I want these? Answer is, I cut this piece right here off of them. This piece right here. And those are the connections that I use. Let me get the right ones together here. Now let's get back to our big one. But you can force these into here, shape them up whatever you want, sand them down. The diameter, certain ones is better than others. This one you'll see, perfect. I now have a 180. I have a 90-degree turn, whatever I need, go around the corner, go down the side of a building, gutters and downspouts, all sorts of things. good for many gauges, especially O and G gauge. And the last thing I have in this group, I have right on this tray. These are valve boxes that I've made. Here they go. Just little valve boxes. You have to have them on all your lines. To make valve boxes, all we're going to need are some flat washers, a roofing nail, the shortest ones you can find, and a split ring compression ring. These are the type you see that if you squeeze them with a pair of pliers, they go shut. I squeeze those down until they're flat right around the straws, and we end up with a neat little valve box on those three. So next month or next show, when you tune in, you'll get to see all the various things that you can make, soda straws and coat hangers. That's it for me tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
This is Tom Farrell. I just want to say that G scale now has me thinking in my backyard. I have done N scale, HO scale, S scale, obviously ON30, O scale, Lionel, never touched G scale. I think it'll be interesting when your program moves along. I'm not really familiar with G scale and where it is today in regards to track. I remember in the old days it was brass track. I'm sure they're not doing that anymore, right?
No, almost all the track is brass.
Oh, really? Still. So, and then the turnouts and the different manufacturers, that would all be interesting, I think, for the viewers, just to know, because you have a whole different set of conditions. You're outside, is it special turnout, special care? And then I assume you're going to do dead rail, so you don't have to worry about putting power to the track. Is that a leap, or how's that go?
Okay, so I'll go back. Let me see. I have modeled in HO, S gauge, O, and G. As I got older, the gauge got bigger. There must be a reason. Yes. As we build this layout, I'm going to get to the point where once we get a track plan, I think you're exactly correct. We'll address track and switches and fasteners for putting it together and how you're going to power your trains. And there's really two choices, I guess three. The three choices are going to be track power, battery power, or live steam.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's people who do all three. Steve Sherrill says, put a string on it and pull it. But yes, I think as we get down the road on building the layout, that's would be exactly the right time to get with that. Yep, that's great.
Steve, I'd like
Yeah.
to ask a question if I have a chance.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, is anyone producing the aluminum rail right now? I used to produce it back in the 90s.
Yes, you can get it in, I think, what, 6 foot, 8 foot lengths?
Yes, I used to make it in 6 foot lengths. It was
Yeah.
back, it used to be called PHS rail. I used to do plastic ties too at the time. But I don't know, I sold it to a company in Michigan, and I don't think if anyone is still producing it or not.
Plastic tie strips?
Yeah, for the Code 250 and 332 rail. I did both in aluminum rail at one time.
I know you can buy plastic tie strips from LGV.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say as well from either Pico or USA Trains, one of the others. And then rail is available, I also believe, from Micro Engineering.
Yeah.
I don't think Micro Engineering may offer tie strips. I can't answer that.
Yeah, not too many people are doing the aluminum rail. I know I sold it to a company in Michigan, and then I think they went defunct after a while.
Yoggers Creek still? And there was a company, Train Lee. They were making plastic extruded rail. I had some samples of theirs. And obviously for dead rail, that's fine. However, for some reason, it didn't go over well and they discontinued it.
I know I used the aluminum rail extensively because of the fact that it was a good conductor of electricity, as well as a good thing to use for your live steam or your battery powered at the time. It was just coming into existence, battery powered.
Right. I would say now, more and more people are going battery.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Sorry to bother you.
Hey,
No,
Steve, this is Bob Geldmacher on the big diameter straw. When the weather gets warmer, Starbucks start to sell some of these cold drinks that have fruit pieces in them. And in order to allow you to suck those fruit pieces up, they put out a fairly good sized diameter straw. And I try to pick them up whenever I go to a Starbucks because they make great pipe loads.
Yes, and when we get into making some projects with this, and I'll tell you all the things you need to do to your straws if you're going to use them outdoors. Okay, you can't just take these outdoors as is.
No, sure.
All right.
Well, thank you, Steve, and a lot of direction to take this over the next year, actually.
Okay. All right, it was good to see everybody again.
Yeah. So next up, we have News and Views HO scale modeling. Ed O'Rourke, MMR. He's building a HO layout. And his segment is sponsored by Mainline Hobbies.
Mainline Hobby Supply is your one-stop store for model trains in G, O, S, HO, N and Z scales, including locomotives, rolling stock, track, train sets, and more to help build your model railroad. We are the largest model railroad shop in the area, and we carry a wide range of model railroad supplies across scales. Our friendly staff is always available to help with your modeling needs and to special order anything you may require. Mainline Hobby Supply is in southern Pennsylvania, halfway between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We are only an hour away from Baltimore, and we are easy to get to from the 70, 81, 83, and 270 freeways. Plan to stop by on your next trip through Pennsylvania. Mainline Hobby Supply also has an online store that can cater to your modeling needs wherever you are located. With our large inventory, fixed shipping costs, friendly and knowledgeable service, and prompt shipping, consider Mainline Hobby Supply for your next online order. Use the QR code to access our online store.
Good evening, Ed.
Good evening.
Thank you for presenting this evening.
Okay. Here we go. There we are. Can we see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go to slideshow.
Yep. All right.
View up top.
Here.
View. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So those of you who missed this in December, I put this together in response to one of Steve Sherrill's what do you want to talk about, which was, what do you do when you move, when you give up the big house and move to different quarters? And so that's what we're been talking about here. This is the new space, new possibilities, new challenges. The folks who owned the place before us had used this as storage. So you can see I moved some junk in there. And this is an important part of that. You see the washing machine and dryer here, and you can see the elevator over in the corner. This is there so that my wife doesn't have to carry the laundry down the stairs. And, you know, being the chief executive officer here, she is the one who grants trackage rights to the New Haven Railroad. So without that elevator, I would be doing this presentation because he wouldn't be living here. So anyway, there you have it. So this is the space. I'll just kind of give you a quick tour. The tables that you see here were originally on that wall as shelves that the people before us had put up. I took them apart, deconstructed them, and they made very nice tables with some, they got a nice plywood top. They're 2 feet deep and 30 inches high, which is just right for my reach-in distance seated. Whoops, wait a minute. All right. So Givens and Druthers. This is John Armstrong's layout planning system, which I find to be very helpful. My givens are that we're going to do heavy electric passenger and freight with catenary in the electric zone. The main line is going to be 2 tracks, number 6 switches minimum, main line minimum 24-inch radius, larger better, 6 to 8 car passenger trains, 9 to 12 car freight trains. And in New Haven Station, we're going to have 4 tracks, approximately centered between the 2 staging areas, space for engine storage and turning. Then the druthers. Druthers are the things that you'd like to have, but maybe aren't going to be a deal breaker if they don't turn out. We want a branch line with switching opportunities, mainline industry sidings, an industrial switching area. I had an operating plan like this in the old space, which was much smaller, that I think worked well with the train line trains running through the station, engine and head end switching and so forth. This worked well for me, and I think with this space I can do more of it. I had planned before we moved in to build the benchwork at desktop height, so finding those things that are 30 inches high, that the height that I can operate in a chair. This is because I've had some friends who ended up confined to a chair, and their layout was built at 52 inches and they couldn't see it sitting down. It's also not at grandchild height if it's 52 inches high. Spaces are regularly shaped. Didn't think there was enough room for a helix. It has a double door across the front, a concrete floor, stud walls, but no wallboard. And there's a water meter on the front wall that I have to, and the water shut off that I have to maintain access to. So here's the plan of the room, which I shared with some division friends. And that's what I recommend if you're planning a layout. Don't do it yourself. Talk to some of the guys who are into that kind of thing and let them have at it, which was what I did. So that's the size of the space. The area you see on the left there is not finished as well, and that's where the water meter and everything is. So I'm not sure that'll exist. So here's some plans that friends provided to me. Any continuous run plan involved either a lift gate across the door or multiple levels and helixes and things. And I decided I wasn't going to do that. The manufacturer's row is under a stairway outside the main room. We'll talk about that in a bit. And as I said, the space at the left is unfinished basement. So here's what we ended up with as a track plan. This is the west staging. This is New York, Maybrook. This over here, the east staging is Boston and Montreal and Cedar Hill Yard. This is the station area, motor storage, locomotive service. And then there's a branch line that connects in the station from the canal line that goes up the back here and around and comes over into here and actually dead ends back over here. And then we have the manufacturer's railway, which is a switching area. And you can see here, there's a little pass through the wall so we can get to that area. Room prep. Okay. You can see here the area that's going to become the manufacturer's railway under the stairs. I had a contractor do the work here. I tell people that I now do all my carpentry work and painting with a credit card. I find it much easier on me and it gets done a lot quicker. So you can see they've put the walls up and finished them for me. I'll paint them to look like sky and then I'll put a backdrop up and you can see the cut through into the manufacturer's area there. And I painted the ceiling. I had them paint the ceiling black like you do in a museum or like you do in theater. which makes it just disappear, but still allows access to all the different things that you've got up there that you may need to, the water shutoffs and things like that you may need to get to. And you could see over in the corner there, the section that's not finished. We'll talk about sometime about how we do that. So let's get out of here. So I find it helpful to have a small portion of the layout finished to a pretty good degree. It gives me something I can show to folks and tell them what I'm doing. So this plan was in John Armstrong's book, 6 HO Model Railroads You Can Build, published by Atlas Tool Company, using their sectional track components. And it was my father's layout when I was a kid growing up, the South Side connecting. I modified the plan a bit to make some other things work. It had a turntable, as you can see here, that was part of the plan, and that was actually part of the runaround track. So I eliminated that and reworked some of the trackage, but basically it's that plan, as you can see here. And this is 10 feet long. I built it with L girders, which I'd saved from the old layout, 1/2-inch plywood with cork sheet. Built it with the same switching components, but I used flex track instead of sectional track. Took some fiddling around to make it fit in exactly. But this is an area that I'm gonna do first while they are working in the other room. It took me a while to get the people in to do the work in the other room. You'll note there's a rolling chair in there, and a music stand is very handy when you want to pop plans up to see what you're doing. So that's where, and this is completely portable. So when my daughters put me in a home, I can cut the connection to the main layout and take this with me and still have something to switch, which I think will be good. The backdrop is just 1/8-inch hardboard that I painted. Most of the structures are salvaged from the old layout. I ended up, you can deconstruct a lot of them and rebuild or do things. The road is drywall joint compound, which I find easy to work with and inexpensive. And here we go. It's pretty much complete here. I've got some DPM modular walls. There's also the Laube linen mill, which is ubiquitous on HO model railroads. Model Power Fraternity House, believe it or not, which became the grocery store here. Motown USA Bank Building, an Ulrich Expanda unit factory, City Classic Smallman Street warehouse, and leftover walls from the Bachman Department Store, Walther's Interstate Fuel Company, and some scratch built stuff. The coal ramp in the back is mostly scratch built. And so, and the Rapido HO 44 tonner, when they came along, I had to have one of those. It just arrived fairly recently, actually. And that's what the New Haven used to switch the manufacturer's railroad. And that's what we will use here. It lets you get another car into the tail track on some of the Ys. And we'll just show you that. You note the Atlas crossing shanty in the back, and here's the Ravello one over here. Again, the roads are drywall joint compound finished with sanded grout, which works really well for a sort of rough asphalt road. And that's that. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Ed. And what was this time period we're looking at there? What was the span from beginning to end?
I've been in the house 2 years this coming Memorial Day. So a year and a half. We've been here a year and a half. And most of the first summer was getting things done. So I didn't really get much done before the fall. fall a year ago. So I've been about a year to get to the point that I am now, where I've got all my track work in and I'm doing my scenery. You can get a lot done if you don't have this complication that so many people have of having to go to work. I'm retired, and you can spend a lot of time down in the train room when you don't have to go earn a living. And seemingly by magic, once a month, money shows up in your checking account just because you were such a good person.
Was is the present layout DCC or analog?
Oh yeah, it's Digitrax DCC. Our local hobby shop way back was an early adopter of Digitrax, so that's where a lot of us here went, which is an oddity in upstate New York because NCE, North Coast Engineering, is just down the road in Rochester, and an awful lot of people are NCE people. And but
Yeah.
I've got too much invested in Digitrax to change now.
I chose Digitrax for my reboot of the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic.
Yeah. Oh, it was the thing that maybe I don't want to make anybody mad, but the Digitrax, I've always felt like Digitrax, if there was an easy way to do something or a much more complicated, convoluted way to do it, Digitrax opted for that. And it's the NCE is I have a couple of friends who have NCE and they run that, and I find it's a little easier, a little less of a learning curve to get going with it. But as I say, I got too much invested in it now. So
Steve Sherrill will cringe when I say this, but I chose Digitrax precisely because it was the most complicated system on the market.
there you go. Okay. Was really the only game in town when I got into DCC. I got into it because of the wanting to run the electrics and wanting to run engines back to back and things like that. I had all sorts of ideas. At one time I thought about powering the catenary and running the electrics off that. Fortunately, DCC came along, so I didn't have to deal with that nightmare.
Well, I guess what I liked about Digitrax is just they had just so many things you could buy, just so much depth to their product line.
Yeah.
That's what attracted it to me, just another dimension to the hobby.
Yeah, the trouble is when stuff goes out of production, you can't get it fixed anymore.
Gotta replace it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much,
Okay,
Ed. That's
yep.
very interesting. And, appreciate you contributing to the show.
Mhm.
And next up, we have our very own Phil Edholm. But before we put Phil on, we're going to run the NewTrax donation video.
Do you enjoy NewTrax modeling? You can help support NewTrax in many ways, but donating to support the show and other activities is really appreciated. This helps pay for the expenses of producing the show, including Zoom, website, and emailing costs. You can support NewTrax financially in 3 ways. First, you can make direct contributions through Patreon. With Patreon, you can make a single or monthly contribution to NewTrax. You can also contribute through YouTube by using super stickers and super chats to donate. Finally, when you watch a YouTube replay, letting the ads run will increase the payout to NewTrax. Thank you for supporting NewTrax modeling.
I just want to say that any support helps. We don't have a lot of expenses with NewTrax modeling, but there are expenses. So if you enjoy what you see, take a moment. And these segments are recorded. Go back, pause it, find out how you can donate, and donate. And next up, we have.
And Tom, the other thing is that any donations that go to NewTrax that we don't use actually go automatically to the scholarship fund. So it's not like we're accumulating a war chest to take a trip to Hawaii or anything.
Damn. I want a new Digitrax system. Phil, in addition to, I don't know how we'd pull this show off without him, to be honest. Phil and I must talk every day. I must have called him 6 times today. So thank you, Phil, for taking my calls.
Cool.
And Phil is
Thanks,
doing,
Tom.
Phil is doing part 2 of scratch building an NMRA contest winner. So in addition to his technical skills in supporting the show, Phil is also an accomplished scratch builder. And this is a very unique construction method. So without further introduction, Phil, go ahead.
Super. Thanks, Tom. So I'm going to buzz very quickly through this because otherwise Tom's going to yell at me. So we talked a little bit about the basis of the building. So let me go through it this a little bit further. So like I said, when I started building this model, I've gotten to the point where I didn't like putting things in trailers. They tend to get banged around a lot. As I thought about how to build buildings and take them off, I decided this concept of doing an acrylic box made a lot of sense. So I actually built all 3 buildings that go on the layout were originally built using acrylic boxes, or started using acrylic boxes. So on the left at the bottom, you see 2 buildings on one side of the layout. On the right, you see the Hovden cannery that's at the other end. This actually is a great technique. This is 1/8 scale and O scale, 1/8 inch acrylic. It's just the standard acrylic you get at Tap Plastics. You can do an HO 1/16 works just fine. I think for the 1/8 has a little bit better rigidity. Basically, the way I did this is I cut almost all the major pieces on my table saw. The key with cutting this is you just want to take a really good sharp blade and set the blade height just minimally above the plastic. So actually what I do is I take a piece of plastic, scrap plastic that's the thickness, I start cutting it, and then I run the blade up till it just breaks the surface. The problem with cutting acrylic is if the blade comes down on the acrylic, it actually can shatter it and create cracks. If it's coming through and shaving away the plastic and you push it smoothly and gently through, you don't get cracking around with the cut points. And then I have this scroll saw, which actually I think my parents gave me when I was young, so it must be very old. And actually used it to cut the joints out where I couldn't use the table saw. I used some of these brass building jacks to hold the walls in place, and then just use the acrylic glue that you get from Tap Plastics. I bought the little dispenser you see on the top right photo there, and just after you put them together, hold them together, just drip that on there, run it down. You don't really need to worry about whether it gets on a little bit or not. You're not trying to make a clear box there. You just don't want to get it over to where you put the windows. So the key then, the next step is you've actually got to sheath this thing in wood. So what I did was I did the outside first. This is Northeastern lumber. It's their board and batten siding on the outside. And as you can see on the upper left, I just put that on. I cut the pieces, and I decided where I wanted the windows. The windows are cut through the wood, and then the wood is glued on, and I did that using epoxy. So I got one of those things where it's 2 tubes and you squeeze it, and you can squeeze out a little batch of epoxy and put it on the wood, spread it all around. Just make sure where the windows are, you stay back about 1/4 inch, so that when you push it down, you don't get any squishing into the window areas. And again, the windows were not cut out here. What you're going to see in a moment is you're actually looking through the 1/8 inch acrylic when you look into the building. Once I got the outside done, then I did the inside, and I just cut it to match. And this was all cut just using a X-Acto knife and a straight edge. What you can see on the bottom is that I have now painted the outside has been done in red. This was done with stains. It was actually done with red stains and then some red craft paints mixed in with the stains. One of the cool things about doing things on acrylic is if you get it on it, it doesn't matter. You can just clean it off with alcohol. Alcohol has no impact whatsoever on acrylic. So cleanup is really easy. The center picture, what you can see on the bottom, I put a track in the middle of this. When I looked at the thickness of the ties to get up for the floor being level, I found the acrylic was about the right thickness. And I put that down, and then I added a couple of rails in, which were ACC'd across, which were for the transfer out onto the dock, which would be the bottom on that picture. The right picture is just an interesting thought. This is how I got power up to the roof. Those are some brass shoes I got somewhere in an estate sale, and I just basically ground them down to match the roof shape, glued them into the acrylic, and then the wood was cut around them. and they've got a brass rod that runs down through the floor, and you kind of see the slot in the center picture there that's cut for the rod. So when I got done, this is what it looks like. Now the windows, the way the windows were done is I took the window frames, these are just tissue window frames, and I sanded them down until the sides of the frames were the same level as the main mullions, which is the lower ones. It turns out there's a slight gap then between the upper mullions and the acrylic, but it turns out it's so small it's virtually impossible to see. And when you look through it and you look at this from this point, you really have no way of telling that this is not that kind of traditional scratch-built structure. Then on the inside, after I got the wood was done, I layered in what would be the framing, and the framing was added on the inside of the wall. So that starts off with, you can see here across, there are some horizontal pieces to hold the wood in place. And the framing here, I was actually up in Sacramento and the old CP Southern Pacific shops. If you go to the very back of the shops, which were built in the 1860s, it turned out what they were used to building was tunnel portals, and they framed the whole building looking like tunnel portals. So I actually tried to replicate that in the design of this in terms of the supports, etc. I'm not going to talk a lot about the interior. Everybody kind of understands this is all just basically scratch-built pieces with little pieces of styrene with NBWs on them for this overhead conveyor system that moves from the interior tracks to the transfer tracks, and then a bunch of extra pieces I won't talk to. The one thing that's interesting about this is that if you look at the pictures of the building, you'll notice that the walls are an 1/8 inch thick plus plastic on either side. So by the time you get done, they're not quite 3/8 thick, but they're actually fairly thick. They're not to scale. There are a couple of places you would notice that. And one is here on the left. If you look at the picture on the left, notice right here, this is actually the wall. So you see the framing here, the door here, and the wall here. But quite frankly, until I pointed that out, for most people, you would never notice it. So even though the walls themselves are thicker than they normally would be with like 1 inch siding, in most cases, it's almost impossible to see. The other thing that's very interesting about this is that when you look in the building, you're actually looking through that 1/8 inch acrylic. So all of these pictures, you can see how clear it is when you look through it. The acrylic is incredibly clear, and you don't get any distortion because of the depth on it. What's really interesting is when you look at the building and you look in, if you look right here, excuse me, let me go back a picture. If you look right here at the bottom of this window, you notice you can see where I cut the board that's on the inside here. But when you look at that same window in this picture where you're looking at the whole building, it's almost impossible to notice it when you first off look at it. So it really turns out you can get very clean windows to look through without having to put windows and window frames in, and it just becomes part of the overall building. The roof was built the same way, 2 pieces of acrylic. What I did was I put these gussets in right here to tie the 2 pieces together. Turns out those were very nice because you saw that shoe earlier. By drilling a hole in these and wrapping a piece of wire around them, when they slide down in, the wire slides onto this shoe, and that's how you get the power to the lights. As I was thinking about building this roof, the roof system, I decided I needed trusses. When you looked in, not having trusses up there wouldn't look good as you looked in the side of the building. And I had bought a 3D printer, as I said, so I decided I should 3D print the roof pieces. So these are all 3D printed. Turns out for them, these are just paper gussets. They're literally cut out of black paper and glued on. And these are a couple of troughs that run 4 of these lights. These are those O-scale lights you can get from We Honest on eBay, and I think there are like 10 of them or $11 or something like that. Very nice. And this is actually just kind of a channel, and the lights run through. And again, starts on one end, comes in, it's got a resistor, 4 lights, runs out the other end. When you drop the roof in on the building, the lights come on. So basically, I was sitting there, I was building this building on the left, and I was looking at the one on the right, which was the same concept, and I was intending to do the same way. And after I'd printed those 3D roof, the trusses here in 3D printer, it hit me, why don't I think about making that building out of the same concept using 3D printing for the actual framing of the walls? So that led me to this. This is actually the pictures of the building. This is the only good picture I've got looking back at Moss Landing. And these were the warehouses they had there. So blowing that up, you can see kind of what it looks like shape-wise. So I designed the building essentially to match that design. So this was my original design. It's 20 by 8 inches. Broke it up into some pieces, put some doors in it because I wanted to be able to get on and off to the dock, the pier that's sitting next to it. In order to print this, you can't, the printer bed is about 8 inches. It's 220 millimeters. So you really can only have about an 8-inch piece. So if you take 20 inches and you break it up into two 6-inch pieces and an 8-inch piece in the middle, you can actually do the whole wall in 3 prints. So what I did was actually at this point took the design that I had and translated it into using I use FreeCAD, using FreeCAD to actually design the walls. So what you see here on this picture is these are actually the printed walls, 3D printed framing for each of these sections. And the way that was done, just very quickly, the trusses are on 8-foot centers, the posts are on 4-foot centers, the windows and doors and the heights and all that was done in the CAD system. Didn't really worry about trying to do a really accurate drawing before I went into the CAD system. So this is a truss wall or a wall print in CAD. So what you can see here is there's the top plate, bottom plate. There are essentially where there are trusses here, you'll see that there are 6x6 beams. Essentially, these are 6.6 millimeter or 6.3 millimeters. So it's 6 inches in O scale. These are 6-inch by 3-inch pieces where you don't have a post on the top. This end here on the wall where you actually tie to another wall piece is actually 3 inches thick, and then they glue together. You notice one of the things I did was I put these holes in for alignment. One of the really cool things in 3D printing, when you glue things together, and I used epoxy to glue those together, you can put in a little piece of, I just use a piece of copper wire that I cut off, or you use brass rod. When you make these holes, you can put them in at the top and the bottom because they're absolutely aligned because you're doing it in CAD. When you put the two pieces together, they actually handle your alignment for you. What you notice is I actually embedded here, and it only goes about halfway through the wall, a diagonal. It turns out I'll show you in a future, the next version that I did of this, not for this building, for another building, I decided it was better to put this on the face of the framing. For this one, though, I had embedded it. And finally, I for the roof trusses, I decided to had to have a way to put those on. So I added these little blocks on the top and then ran a hole through all of them so that you could actually clip the trusses in place. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but these were the steps in FreeCAD, which is typical for any CAD system. Obviously, if you use Tinkercad, you might do this a little bit differently. But basically, you start off by creating a panel. Then I carved out pieces. You could carve out just the center and do all of the other framing pieces as individual pieces and put them in place. But I did it as actually removing the material to what I wanted. And then where the windows were, I added in these little pieces above and below the windows and a few other pieces, and then the diagonal. And then finally, those top pieces across the top. So it's essentially, as anything else in CAD, it's a matter of deconstructing the thing into a process to get you there. And in the end, that's what you get out of the CAD system. This then goes through I use Cura, which is the slicer that takes the CAD image and turns it into something that can be printed. It's going to be printed on a filament printer. This is not resin. So you'll notice what I did was I printed this with that interior diagonal down. Gives you a nice finish. It was printed, I think, at about 1.2, if I remember, about 1.2 millimeters on the dynamic quality. So it's very much a pretty traditional print that prints on your print bed. So you see that's 6 inches wide, and you see the print bed's a little bit wider because it's actually about 8 inches. So that's really all I wanted to get to tonight. We're going to focus next week on how you take that and basically assemble it, put it together. And then the real biggie is how you paint and finish all the pieces so that they can be assembled. Anyway, back to you, Tom.
Phil, this is Bob Gelmacher. I got a question for you. where the wood pieces meet, did you create any slight indentations to represent joints?
No, I didn't. I
Okay.
really didn't. Though it turns out you actually can, but I wouldn't try to do it in the plastic. One of the things I'm going to talk about when I talk about finishing is one of the keys to finishing this stuff with wood is you spray it with about 4 coats of filler primer. So automotive filler primer you can buy at Home Depot. It's basically a gray primer that's got big, almost dusty particles in it.
Yeah.
And it's designed so you spray it on your car where you got a scratch and you can sand it smooth and it'll fill the scratch hole in. If you spray something with about 4 coats of that, you build up essentially a layer of stuff and you can scrape it off with a razor saw. And I'll show you that in the next session.
Okay.
If you wanted to, you could go to the top of the walls and scribe a piece across there. You know, just use an X-Acto knife to turn it over backwards, so you're not using the sharp side, you're using the back of the point, and you could scratch a joint across there, and you could actually see it.
Mhm.
Generally, I don't think you see that many of those things, but anyway, that's how I would do it.
Well,
Okay,
thank you.
good. Thanks.
Any other questions for Phil? Well, thank you very much.
Again.
And up next, we have Scratch Builders Corner with Martin Breckbell. Martin is sponsored by our Observations newsletter before we start his program, actually. Or we can just jump, we'll do his presentation afterwards. Martin, why don't you just go ahead?
Yeah. Jumping the gun, just getting us moving, always downhill, hopefully. Okay, so where we left off last week, stuff to do on the X-Acto car, the last X-Acto car. Thank goodness, the last of them. Cleaning everything, well, that's easy. I mean, you sit there with a sponge and pads and warm water and just keep wiping everything off until all the dirt's gone. Adding in interiors, well, that's a little more problematic. The roof issues, that's a little bit of glue. Then we'll get back to the exterior when I get to the slide about the exterior. So the interior, well, a new coat of paint hides a plethora of sins and age, and a new floor. I still have about 3 square feet of this dollhouse wallpaper, but it makes good carpeting in an O-scale car. The fun part, of course, is getting it to fit neatly inside a less than square space. So I actually made a template first out of cardboard. I saved the back of writing pads and tablets and things. I have a whole box for them. And after getting one of those cut and fitted into place that was acceptable, then I actually cut out this paper and glued it in place after I got the floor nice and clean. And that makes it a little bit tidier on the inside. So we add a little bit of wood framing to the inside. We've got the doors all framed out, some scribe siding below the windows, some chair railing, some posts in between the double windows. Can't really do anything between each window because of the window arrangement, and also because it's 3D raised on the inside. So there's not much I can do with this to make it much better than this without ripping out that old glazing and cutting individual window glazing and such. And I just decided that that was just too much for me, and I would probably end up ruining things and making things worse. So let's see here. Okay, so then I had some seats and tables. These are all white metal castings. The car wasn't heavy enough, so I added another ½ pound to it, just to make sure it would not roll away in the dark. Seats are from Q-Car. The tables are from Keel Line, which is now Scale City Designs. Just pre-paint everything and slowly put it in place with a little bit of goo, a little bit of CA, and lots of tweezer work and for hemostats. I just want to call attention to it. You can see at the top here, you can see how this siding, this metal side is actually embossed. You can actually read it from the inside. Of course, it's reversed, but that just demonstrates the fact that the interior is not flat by any stretch. It's totally three-dimensional, which poses all kinds of interesting challenges. Now we look from the other side. These are actually theater seats. I got these from Pacific Northwest. They're 3D printed, and I thought they were a nice little addition right here in the corner. Maybe put the children there or whoever. And I salvaged this cabinet with the drawers on it. This was a balsa wood and paper piece that was originally in the car, and I thought I should try and save that. It got another coat of paint, but it's back in place in I think the opposite corner from where it was, but I think it just had to be saved. Somebody spent too much time making it to just throw it away. So that takes care of the interior. You really can't do much with the other two parts of the interior because, as you can see over here, there's a hole in the floor. That's where that 2.5-inch wood screw goes through the floor. Can't really do anything about it. And you can't really see in these anyhow. These louver systems are, whatever they're made from, wherever they came from, they're very, very nice, but they completely obstruct the view, which is great if that's what you want. Okay, the exterior. This is where it got a little more complicated. I tried to lift off the paint without ruining the paint underneath of it. The lettering, the white lettering that was in the middle and the gold lettering that was at each end. Couldn't really lift it off without taking away some of the red that was underneath of it. I tried all sorts of tricks with Q-tips and micro brushes and solvents of all sorts. And either the solvents did nothing or they did everything. And there wasn't much middle ground. So I just took as much as I had to get rid of the white and the gold and stopped there. Then I went back and painted it with some, I think that's a red oxide. I think it's actually polyscale red oxide. Just at the letterboard. Didn't touch anything else. All that dark black stuff, I decided I can't move that. If I try to move that, I'm going to ruin the entire paint job. Then I'm going to end up repainting the entire car, and that's just going to ruin everything. It's better to just salvage it at a certain stopping point and preserve what I can. I did go back with, I managed to find my my artist oil paints. About 40 plus years ago, I actually did paint. There's a big stack of art sitting in a corner of the other room, waiting to be framed someday. But I still have all my oil paints, oddly enough. I think my daughter absconded with all my acrylics, but and she left me the oil paints. And I found in there, I have an antique gold, a tube of antique gold oil paint, and a very, very fine brush. Very, very slow, decaffeinated day, and I went back and touched just the top of the raised letters on it. Says Wagner's sleeping car. And the font on this is kind of peculiar, as you might imagine, being stamped embossed into copper, but it's about as close as I could get on each side. And there's the one side, and there's the other side. And I think the only other thing I did was to glue back in. There was one of these clerestory vents was loose, and these lights were loose at the one end. So inside the wall, I was able to put some CA down on the inside of it and hold it in place without making a mess, and stopped there before it went too far. The roof snapped right back in to place. It's very, very tight. I opted not to put the 2.5-inch screws back in place. I don't think they're necessary. It's a pretty fair fit without them. And if I ever want to do anything with the interior, or somebody else wants to take on the louvered sides or add figures, that top will come right back off with a little bit of persuasion, gentle persuasion. So I'm calling that car done for now. Some dummy couplers on the ends, and we're leaving that alone. So that car is done. That project's done. Whoop. So there was a third car in the box. I use the word loosely. Car was maybe the most appropriate word, part of the phrase. This one took a bit of a beating in the shipping. It was not disassembled and beaten up like this when sold to me. This is going to be a challenge, to say the least. The missing truck that's not pictured is I have it. It's not a problem. This car apparently had something dropped on it from above with such force, or pushed up from the bottom with such force, that it actually bent the car bolsters in the trucks. So that's one thing I had to do, is straighten the bolsters in the trucks. I've never had to do that before. I had to take some pretty sharp blow. You can see this is cars made out of wood and paper. These window pieces are paper. This is wood. I have to get this all flattened out back into one piece. It's a little rough, I think, is the understatement of the day. That interior has to come out. The walls have to get straightened and braced and flattened. You can see the window components are more than a little crooked. Being basically a piece of paper, they're not going to stay very tightly. So everything's going to come out. I have to fix the walls, stabilize them, get them structurally stable, and then put an interior back into it. I have parts of the ends, the observation railing, that is paper. A lovely pattern is paper, and there's a piece of brass wire that goes up and around it, which plants it in place and holds it in a rounded contour for the end. I'm looking to get those done over with photo etched brass. Maybe actually get them in photo etched brass, and maybe more than one, maybe 2 layers, and solder them together. And again, maybe sandwich a piece of 15 thousandths brass wire into them, and have something that I can plant them with into the end railing. It's a challenge. I say that in all due respect to even my skills. I haven't worked on something this beat up in a long time. But just so you know that it might be worth doing, this car actually did have a prototype. There actually was a Moraga, and on the Sacramento Northern. And you can find lots of pictures of the exterior in various incarnations. Apparently at one point in time, originally, it was a powered car with a controller at both ends. The open platform had a set of controllers on it because they had to reverse it back off the wharf and everything, bringing in passengers. That was later removed, and it became a trailer coach. But I'm not sure I would like to be the motorman standing out there completely naked on the observation deck running this car. Might be a little bit dicey. But you can see, okay, so we've got some chairs here, some deck chairs out here. I'm not sure what's over here. Some blinds, Venetian blinds, whatever. There's some various frosting windows. Now, you know what I know about it. I'm not going to come back to this in 2 weeks. I don't think I'm on next week, because I think next week is the My Build. I could be wrong on that. Either way it goes, I'm not going to come back with this car anytime soon. This is not in a few weeks, it's probably more than a few months. So I will be doing something else in my next visit. But if anybody's got any idea what the interior would like, you know where to find me, because I would love to get a floor plan, photo, drawings, anything on what the interior is really supposed to be, as opposed to my just putting everything sort of back where I think it came from, I'm guessing. And I think I'm done. So
Isn't that thing in, didn't they save that and it's in Fairfield?
I have no idea. Fairfield.
You might want to look at the Trolley Museum there in Fairfield.
Fairfield, what state?
California.
Thank you.
The California Traction Museum in Fairfield. That's what was the Sacramento Northern Line. They
Yeah.
actually run trains on it fairly regularly, and they have a huge barn with a number of cars in it. And Moraga is actually a town in the
Yes.
Bay Area, up in that area. So
Well, I've already tried to contact them, and I got nothing but resounding silence. So, I mean, if anybody's up in that area of the world, maybe you can go knock on the door for me, because I've tried to do it virtually and without much success.
Martin, do you plan to build it as powered, or?
No. I'm not.
So it's going to be the trailing
I'm
parlor
going to
car.
leave it. I'm going to leave it in the incarnation that it arrived to me.
Okay, because it almost looked like that big boxy section in the middle might have held a motor or something.
No, the motors would have been inside the trucks.
No, I mean, not to power the actual car, but that might have been where the motor would have been when it was the prototype was a powered car.
Well, if it was a powered car, it would have been powered like a trolley car, and it would have been traction motors in the trucks. Probably had a pole anyhow for electrical supply, though.
Martin, two questions on dates. When was that actual Moraga car running? What was
20s, 30s?
1920s, 30s?
I'm guessing. You can look it up if you just Google Moraga, Sacramento Northern Moraga. You're going to get a page and maybe 1,000 more hits.
And the second question is, how old are those models you're working on? What years were those?
Which one, the Exacta? Well, the metal Exacta one is pre-World War II. The plastic one is probably concurrent with World War II, or immediately thereafter. This car, it's anyone's guess. It could be anywhere from late 30s to early 40s. As much as I like playing with these cars, there's a certain amount of satisfaction in bringing them back and making them look decent, but there's also a lot of suffering involved. Yes, I know it's O scale, so first thing you have to do is suffer, but I'd like to minimize that a little bit. I derive a lot more enjoyment from a pile of sticks and a picture and building something.
Well, I appreciate
the roof that you had for the Moraga car. Looks like something out of a Pittman car, the molded plastic.
It does, except it's a lot wider. I think this model is actually 17/64. So I think it's a little, as I started to measure it, I was like, what am I going to do with this roof? The roof apparently just doesn't quite fit exactly on top of it smoothly and cleanly, but the width is significantly wider than a standard car. So I haven't actually measured it, but I have 3 or 4 traction cars that are 17/64. They're rather imposing when you put them next to other cars. That little extra 64th just seems to pushes in all 3 dimensions, so it gets bulkier quickly. And I'm not even sure that it's made of. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And
sure.
You are on next week.
I am. I got to do something.
And,
I do run away into the shop.
I also want to say that I think you're all aware, but Martin is our editor of our Observations newsletter. And I believe you're all on the mailing list, but if you're not, just register on newtracksmodeling.com and you can see it there if you're not emailed it. And our circulation is over 8,000 now. That's pretty amazing. And next up, we have part 2 of Carroll Creek Designs. If Phil could show that PowerPoint. Carroll, this is just a temporary ad we made actually this evening for Carroll Creek. But Carroll Creek's going to be a new sponsor for Steve Sherrill's Narrow-Minded show, which is a focus on narrow gauge. And we're going to produce an ad for Carroll Creek, but we're not quite there yet. But this evening is part 2 of the wonderful line that Carroll Creek Design is producing in 3D printing. And to be honest, looking at his PowerPoint today, I was simply amazed at the number and variety of products that these guys have put together in less than 2 years' time. And they're all ON30 and ON18. And I personally have purchased some of them at Al Judy's recent show, and they are magnificent detail. And with that introduction, Bob or Steve.
Steve. Well, thank you, Tom. First off, I don't know if we're going to talk about the Micro Madness meet this Saturday or not at this time. Maybe later in the presentation, but we are going to have a meeting, a Micro Madness meeting in West Virginia this Saturday from 9 to 3. If you go to the Micro Madness Facebooks, you will get the information on it. So now I'd like to introduce Bob Gelmacher. And Bob, go ahead.
I got it. And let's get our share up and running. And everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yes or no?
No, I don't see it.
Not yet. One more time.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, like Tom said, this is just a continuation of what we did last week, and it's the tail end of the presentation. And let's make sure that this is going to click over. There we go. And I'm Bob Gelmacher, and Ryan, who just spoke, is my partner in this ordeal. And this is about the middle of the presentation. These are some of the 12-foot ON30 gondolas that we put together. There's a 2-board version, a 3-board version, and also a braced side version. All these come ready to run. They've been primed. They have KD 148 couplers on them, and also 36, and now I'm using 36-inch HO wheels. It seems like that worked out pretty well, but all of these come so that you can put them right on the track and hook them up and make them go. We also printed out the wheels, or the brake wheels, and all the equipment that goes with it, and we were pretty happy with the model. These are some of the cabooses or caboose that Ryan put together. And Ryan, why don't you talk about these?
These are a mixture of ON18 and ON30. Really, it's just starting out trying to get some ON18 stuff out there for the customers so they can pretty much have a complete train. What we've done with these, and if you look at the ON30 caboose on the top right, that is a Bachmann coach truck, pops right on the bottom of it. So it comes in a kit form. You put the caboose together and pop that on. The bottom left ON30 is just a kind of a little whimsical bay window caboose for narrow gauge, based off the B&O Blue. That has our own freight truck on the bottom. Now, both of those, if you do the coach wheel, it's ready to go. The ON30, the bay window, comes complete with wheels. It does not have couplers, though. You can put your own couplers on it if you would like. But it does come with the 36-inch metal wheels. The ON18 cabooses that we're producing come with metal N scale wheels. These are the 2-axle versions. The cupola road caboose has been redesigned a little bit. That's an earlier version of it. The cupola on top is a little bit larger now. The regular road caboose on the top left, typical 2-window based off of just a sawmill caboose that you'll find on most of the narrow gauges. Go to the next slide, Bob. Again, the logging caboose has the coach truck. The ON18, that's a 4-truck transfer caboose. That was the first caboose that we produced. They will take just standard N-scale wheel sets on the bottom. The ON30 Shorty Road caboose, that's our truck again, comes with the metal wheels on it. Just trying to get a variety together. Most of these are going to be printed kit form. As you see the top right, they come white. You paint them any color you want. Couplers, typically, if they're going to be on micros, I've been using the KD 146s. They give it a little bit extra shank length on it. 148s will work too. On the ON18, also using the 146s, they seem to work. And we've also come out too with a new link and pin type setting. I don't know how good that'll be, but let's see if we can get that on. Well, probably not. I will have them at the meet this weekend on Saturday.
It's on the next slide, Ryan.
Oh, there you go.
The Lincoln pin.
The Lincoln pins are designed to fit into the KD slots that are on our cars. So the body mount will be going into that slot with a pin sticking up, and then you'll have a drawbar between it. They seem to be working really well with ON18. The pulls the car on center, takes a lot of the derails off. The ON18 micros seem to work well with those new couplers, and we're constantly evolving and redesigning them, but that's the latest version right now. We'll have those available on the site this weekend, and also at the show at the micro meet. But here's some variety of different things that we have detail-wise. What's been really popular is in the center, the radiator fin cores. That is been popular. People are scratch built on their engines. We have various sizes in there. They can be stacked, cut, and really does a nice job. Looks like a core for the radiator, so you can be able to do different designs with your engines with those. The top right is cantilever poles, where you have a whole ON18 interurban section. And people were saying that they were having a hard time with poles, so we designed the poles and printed them up. You can use those poles and actually power, or you can just use them for show. And the next one, there you go. We also had a lot of people ask us to do switch stands. So after a lot of trial and error on those, we are offering some switch stands here. Very affordable. They're printed. You can do ON30 O scale switch stands all the way up to G scale switch stands. The G scale switch stands that we have, actually, if you put a connecting bar to the G scale switch, or an Aristo or a USA switch, the targets will turn. So it's a functional switch stand in G scale. In the O scale, they don't. They're fixed. But a good little roadside detail. Very reasonable too. I think the pack of 4, I can't think off the top of my head, I think are $15 or $10 for a pack of 4. On the left-hand side, we have handrails or piping. Different sizes, different variety of lengths with 90-degree bends in them. Just to run some detail on engines, to do handrails for your buildings. But most everything we try to keep is very reasonable. As you can see, that's a pack of, and usually they're over 25 in there. for $5 or $3.
These are some of the details. We don't have them, well, we have them packaged, but I don't show the packages on here. And a lot of these were I created because of a need for my own railroad. For instance, on the right-hand side, brake linkages and also the brake cylinders, so that on my flat cars, this detail is on the underside, and it really makes for a nice car. The same thing on this side. We've made some stirrups and also turnbuckles, and again, it added details. I like to add windows, of course, to a lot of different things, and I realized that we can make the windows based on some of the windows that you can buy commercially. But the nice thing is that you can make the windows any size and any configuration that you want. And there will be times, and I have people ask me about it, where there was a window that you just can't buy, and that's the time that you can go to the 3D printer. The other things that we've made are these dwarf signals. And I have a lot of these on my layout. Stick a bicolor LED up there, and it actually shows me the condition of the switch based on the position that the switch is in. Also, I needed some building lights, and again, these are available. We talked about custom work, and here's just two examples, and we talked about this really quickly last week. Was this particular coach car was narrower but longer than the traditional Bachmann, and somebody came to me and asked me whether or not we could make the roof, and we did. The trick is to get these angles on the ends just right, and it took a while to do that. But because this is so long, and Phil mentioned it before, there are some limitations on the bed size on a lot of the printers. I actually had to split this in half and put a couple of pegs in here so that we could put this together to make the length that we needed, and then fill it in with some putty, sand it off, and paint it, and it came out pretty nice. The other thing from a custom standpoint is the club that I'm with. We had a 4-foot module, but it was a curved module, and we wanted to add negative scenery like you see here. So we decided to put an arched trussel in there, and this is all 3D printed. Many, many, many pieces that went into this piece, but it turned out pretty well. As Tom mentioned before, here's how you can get in touch with us. We can email at our Carroll Creek Design Group at gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page, so just go to Facebook and look up Carroll Creek Design. And then on the web, we have the site here, but it ends in .square.site. We've taken on the Square system to be able to accommodate credit cards. And since we were able to get a very reasonable website out of them for $0, we took advantage of it. And the thing is, we ask everybody is just think about us the next time that you have a project, whether it's going to be an ON18 project, an ON30 project, or something that's special that you just can't go to a hobby shop and buy. We'll be happy to talk with anybody to try to design and meet your needs. And with that, thank you very much. Any questions?
And I want to add something too, for everybody that's on here tonight. If you go to our website, if you want, you can purchase one of our freight cars. Any one, you'll get 50% off of one freight car. It's going to run for the week. So the coupon code is new tracks 50. So if you punch new tracks 50 in the coupon code at checkout, you'll get 50% off of any one freight car that you want. So if you want to dive into ON18 or add to your fleet for ON30, that gives you a chance to sample one of our products.
Well, thank you too for being on this evening, and really is fascinating what you're doing. And you know, we've said time and again that the future of the hobby is actually in the hands of people like yourself doing the 3D printing, doing very modeling. Can you imagine old school trying to do die casting of styrofoam, the enormous costs involved in doing this the old way, or scratch building would be the other alternative, which would, but this is a the future of the hobby, and we're pleased to support what I term as cottage industries. And thank you for being.
Two things came out of tonight, Tom, that I really appreciated. Number one, Charles at Cato, and this is the first time that I've said it right. I've always said Cato, but we're using their 11109 drives in our little ON18 engines. So we want to talk to him more about that. The other thing was I'm real interested to see what Phil is going to do with the painting and the texturing on his interiors in those buildings, because I was going to do not the very same thing. I was going to do it all out of wood, and I'm going to rethink that, and possibly print the interiors with the printers these days.
One thing you showed looking at your PowerPoint this afternoon, that curved, I don't know what you'd call it, the viaduct.
Yeah.
I think I actually have an application for you, which next time I see you. By the way, I will be going to Steve Sherrill's show this weekend. 9-hour drive for me, but nothing's too far for my friends.
Hey, all right.
Thank you, Tom. That's good.
Yeah. Tom,
And,
it's not just my show.
well,
these two guys right here are a big help. They're helping me arrange everything. They're doing refreshments. Just, I used to do 10 of these shows by myself, and to have help is just wonderful. And these guys are really great.
I mean, the great thing about this hobby is, while the Zoom calls are great, it's great to, be in person with all you folks, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, and I'll be driving there with a fellow named Andy Root. I don't know if you know him, but he's bringing a micro module himself. So anyway, I'm looking forward to the show, and I will take a bunch of photographs and videos, and Steve will present that in the next. Yep.
Well, the West Coast can't have all the fun with their micro meets. We got to put one on the East Coast.
Well, East Coast, West Coast, so long as we're doing right.
There you are.
Yeah, there's the flyer.
We have over 20 micro layouts on the schedule. We're scheduled to be there. Plus, we have Matt Shabaro, who has written a book on making small layouts, and it's on Amazon, and it's on the second printing. So he'll be there with his micro. So it'll be worthwhile to talk to him and get his ideas on building micros and small layouts.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. Speaking of future of the hobby, Steve and I talk pretty much every week, and not a lot of people are building the big rustic buff and old Gothic layouts anymore. The micros are an interesting concept. So anyway, thank you too for presenting. Thank you, Steve, for bringing them on the show, and we'll see all of you in person in a few days, actually.
Yes.
Good.
You have a title for that book for Matt Chavarro?
Yes, it's called, I just looked it up. It's called Model Railroading in Small Spaces.
Okay.
He's going to have some books there too.
Well, next up, I'm going to present something on the rustic buff and old Gothic, but before we do that, I'd like to run the New Tracks Facebook page video.
Not a video, just a PowerPoint about the Facebook page. For those of you who are not on the Facebook page, please jump on. You can use the QR code or just go tiny URL NTM-Facebook, and that'll take you to the Facebook account and join there. And it's a cool place to continue these discussions and put more pictures and more models up. So we'll probably have an ad for this at some point, but if you're not part of the Facebook page, join it. It's a way to talk between meetings on Wednesdays. Have a good one.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, next up, we have my presentation on scratch building. We'll have the closing of the show, and then the Caboose, so stick around for the Caboose. It's another great video featuring a HO scale, a mature operating layout in the Pittsburgh area. Phil took that video when this past summer at the Pittsburgh Narrow Gauge Convention. So let me jump into my presentation. Everybody see that? Okay, so I'm going to show, I don't know if these, interesting. Hold on one moment. I'm not supposed to have technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is scratch building on the ON30 Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. This is the Carroll Creek Depot. This is a nice little depot that I made for a town I'm working on. I think everybody that's watched the show the past couple years is aware of my shanty town. Well, this is the adjacent town, Turtle Creek, named after a town in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that I used to live near. That is the finished depot, all scratch built. And I'm going to show you how I made that this evening. These were the materials. Little sensitive mouse. I used Mount Albert basswood sheets for the clapboard. I used inexpensive acrylic paint to paint the outside of the structure. And then I used these Hunterline washes to weather it. And then one of my little tricks of the trade is this scratch brush that I got at Micromark. The roofing is actual cedar shakes from Evergreen Hill Designs. I believe they're still in business, cedar shingles. So I always start with a piece of plywood, and I don't really have a plan other than in my head. So the first thing I do is just basically try to maintain a 1/2 inch perimeter around the model, around the piece of plywood, and I build within that square. And I painted the perimeter black and the inside gray, and then I sketch in what I envision this thing's going to look like. Next up, I took that clapboard siding from Mount Albert, and on the reverse side, I sketched in my depot with pencil. And then because I knew I was going to do a video, I went back over it with ink. And then I cut out the windows and doors. If you'll notice, it's still one sheet. I haven't separated the 3 walls in this case. And then I began the construction. Now, interesting enough, when you do scratch building or you're building these structures, you don't have to get too precise with the corners, because just like in real construction, trim covers up these corners. So they go away. I always use 1/4 inch material to brace my models. You'll never see any warpage in anything I build. Perhaps I do a little overkill, but it doesn't really cost you that much in money or time to do it. So I just brace them very extensively. And you're not going to see that gap if you're wondering why I left a gap there. There's a roof line that covers that. So now one of the things I do is this has a vertical clapboard type siding on the extension of the depot. That's to present the illusion that the main structure existed with clapboard with regular siding, and then they added this extension on. just adds a little variety to the model. And again, it's extensively braced. I use super glue on this construction. I always paint the inside of my structures with a inexpensive craft flat black. These craft flat black paints are the flattest paints and most inexpensive paints I've ever come across. The outside is also painted with a craft yellow paint. And at this point in the model, I would say that that's what I would call obnoxious yellow. And it'll get toned down, as you'll see. So you can see there's room for a foundation around the perimeter of the main building. Everything has been painted with the hard yellow. It's another view. That's sort of a leap here, but what I do is I take that scratch brush that I showed you in the very beginning and I scratch all the surfaces. Then I take the Hunter line washes, these alcohol washes, and I paint the entire structure with a couple colors of these, the Hunter line alcohol washes. Then I take a white acrylic dry brush. So I'll put a little paint in my brush. I'll paint a paper towel, knocks most of the paint off. And then in a downward motion, I'll put a white dry wash on the outside of the building. If I'm going to use the Hunter line washes on top of this, I'll spray the entire building with a sealant, like a dull coat. Though you do have to be careful that alcohol sometimes dissolves dull coat, but typically not. So if you're going to do multiple layers of paint or washes, I frequently dull coat in between so we don't muddy the colors, as we say, artists say, because the acrylic, if you put a white acrylic over yellow acrylic, you're going to get a cream yellow. So you need to typically seal in between coats. And then the green is just for an accent. That's also an inexpensive acrylic there. It's a very easy technique, a very simple technique, and you almost can't fail. And that's a far cry from the obnoxious yellow that this thing started out as. And here we're beginning to trim it out. I used a Minwax stain in this case, just a dark stain. I don't remember the specific color, but I pre-stained all the wood. And then these are 1x4s and 1x6s on the outs, look like 1x4s on the trim of the building, and then 2x6s, or I'm sorry, 1x6s for the platform. That'll all get toned down too. And those are Grant Line windows and doors. And that's a Victorian window on the right. And now I've begun putting the roof on. Likens to airplane construction there on the left extension. That's just, at the time I had a sheet of balsa wood. I wanted to burn out what balsa wood I have. I normally construct in basswood. That roof looks like it's 1/16 inch plywood. So I've built 2 platforms, and see that brick paper? I went online, Googled brick, found one that I liked, printed it out, cut it out with an X-Acto, and glued it on there with Elmer's white glue. The windows and trim around the door, those are all painted with the Tamaya chocolate brown. And I put some lines on the roof so I could put my, those are 2x8s supporting the roof. Those are just little sticks that don't go all the way through the roof, just on the outside there. So the building's just coming along, all 4 sides. Now I'm using, that's basswood there. getting close to finishing here. Starting to be a nice look. See all those corners? See the trim? Those are very fine 1x4s, 1x6s. The horizontal trim are 1x4s. The vertical trim is 1x6s. So we've covered up the rather crude fit of those two sides. One thing I like to do when I do my siding there is match the horizontal siding. So if you notice the front on the left part of the photo and then the right on the side, you see how the boards are more or less equal, they're not offset. That's a critical, if you don't have that, if you don't watch for that, then your siding, one side of your siding's higher than the other, it doesn't look realistic. And there's a pullback to see what I'm talking about. Now I've put on the cedar shingles, start in the bottom and work up. I just use Elmer's glue. There's the finished model. See, with pan pastels, I've knocked back that Minwax platform, the heavy dark brown stain has been knocked back to match the weathering of the actual depot itself. I left the cedar shingles. I didn't stain those, but I did go back with pan pastels, white and gray, and showed an aging there. It has a uniform weathering about it. Nothing is fresh about any of the paint on this model. And put a couple details on there to accent the model. Here's the side. It's a nice little attractive model. The nice thing about scratch building is, to my knowledge, there isn't such a thing as a little kit like this. So if you like little depots, you got to make one yourself. It's really not that difficult. If you use these commercial sidings from Mount Albert or Larkspur, and there's others, and dimensional wood. The advantage to scratch building is you get exactly what you want. The structures fit specific site, and the costs. I mean, I'll bet you I don't have $20 in this model, and a kit, if there was one, would be $150 at least. The signs are just simply Googled. And my little joke, I always put a no dumping sign, then I always have garbage there. Just my little private joke on my layout.
Tom,
Yeah,
what did you use to knock back your coloring on the decking?
the pan pastels.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the finished model. And the model has been placed on the layout now. That's Turtle Creek. That's on the actual layout. And the advantage to building on plywood is in the unlikely event that I move again. The last Rustic buff, an old Gothic railroad, was 15 years in the making and one afternoon to take out, principally because all of the structures that I had were on these plywood bases. And literally, you go in with an X-Acto knife, trace the perimeter where it meets the layout, and pop the structure out. But it's a nice little depot, and scratch building, it's one of a kind. Any questions?
Tom, what did you use for window shades?
Again, I went to Google and I looked up just window shades, actual ones, and I bring them into PowerPoint, downsize them, print them out, cut them out with an X-Acto, and typically Elmer glue them to the back of the acetate.
Tom, when you're knocking down the color with your pan pastels, what do you use to apply them, especially in the corners? Do you use the little makeup sponges or things, or do you use a brush?
I use paintbrushes. I don't, I
Okay.
do makeup brushes, those foam things. I never use them. I imagine they work, but I just use a paintbrush.
They work, but they don't get in corners like a brush does.
Yeah. And the advantage of pan pastels over regular chalk is I seal all my buildings when they're all done with dull coat. If you spray dull coat on a chalk weathering, the chalk disappears. But the pan pastels hold up to dull coat. Okay, well, we have a tradition with the show that before we run the caboose, we have Father Ron on. Father Ron couldn't make it this evening, but we do have a video. And after Father Ron gives the closing, I would appreciate you folks sticking around for the caboose because we've got a lot of videos from that Pittsburgh narrow gauge convention, and these layouts are just spectacular, and people opening up their homes to the public. It's just wonderful. And anyway, so Phil, if you could run the closing. Yeah.
Almighty God, just as our models imitate the beauty of your creation, may we imitate your kindness and generosity to us in our relationship with others. Bless us now and always. Amen.
Thank you, Father Ron. And now, Phil, if you would run our caboose.
A springs type of thing.
Yeah, almost like a pico.
That's
So this was a very operations-oriented railroad.
Goes into down below the benchmark and this, and make it just a little tad bigger. So you can it cost me probably less than $1 to make it.
Yeah, mine have the tortoise machines and touched up everybody.
Okay. Some of the harder to reach turnouts I have. Most and I try to do and it gives you a lot of makes the scene that might be way out. 2 years ago. Mainline really See, I'm the one in southwestern Pennsylvania, so crossing the Alleghenies. So I have grades, and they're probably about 2.5%. But
Yeah, that's okay.
with the free-flowing bench work, and I try to keep track, not from being parallel with the edge.
Did you ever have this in one of the magazines?
Yeah, it's been featured in Craftsman back in '98, and Model Railroad Hobbies just did a video on this thing, and in that.
Yeah, there was
on
an
this.
article too.
Yeah, there was an article too, in conjunction with this.
This layout is be 40 years old. It started out analog. It's presently running DCC, and they regularly have operation sessions. Everything is weathered and ran flawlessly. We were there minutes. Really hidden photos, really neat things. These company houses. Yeah, there's some company houses. One of them layouts. All the necessarily.
Yeah, very much Pennsylvania area railroad, lots of mines, and one of the things you notice is that all the track work is on the fascia, so you can see very easily where you go as you move across the railroad. It's important when you're doing operations with folks that are not familiar. Huntington Northern was the name of the railroad.
And it just ran and ran and ran. There was no moments. Round and round she went. It's a very large layout. Well, that concludes the show this evening. I appreciate all the presenters this evening, and I appreciate the production team behind this. Pat, Phil, Mr. Thornton. It takes a lot to put one of these together, and we'll see you next time. Have a good evening.